people here, God-fearing, religious, conservative, the more Christian, Catholic crowd, whatever it is we have here in Brazil. There's this old joke from the encyclopedia, I think, that Brazilian Catholicism is just Brazilian Catholicism. Everyone goes to church on Sunday, but on Saturday, everyone goes out to party. But anyway, people here in Brazil have this there's a certain resistance, like, oh my god, right? People say Muslims aren't gonna come here, or if they do, they're gonna clash with the evangelicals, and so on. I think I've already talked about this before. Maybe not in other videos, but maybe in live streams. If you stop to think about it, evangelicals actually have a lot in common with Muslims, with Islam. I still remember it to this day. It wasn't that long ago, it must have happened in the last 2 years with one of those pastors from TV channels. Those evangelical churches quoting that passage from the Bible, right? That women have to obey their husbands in everything. So if you look at it, they're actually pretty closely aligned. Actually, if you compare, it's the Catholics who have gotten soft, right? It's the Catholics who started not hitting on single women anymore, divorced women, promiscuous women, and so on. That's how the floodgates for feminism opened. How feminism started infecting religions, that's how it got in. Actually, there was even a comment where a guy said something absurd. He was a spiritist. And then he said that the current situation with feminism, this suffering that men are experiencing from women and from society, is a karma that men have to pay because they oppressed women for millennia, right? And I've been away from Spiritism for a long time, but at the time I didn't think about it. But someone else commenting said that this doesn't make any sense because even in Spiritism, a person is born multiple times, each time as a different gender. A person can be born a woman once and then be born a man, so this idea that men have to pay doesn't make any sense at all. Some kind of karma with women. All men collectively have some historical debt to all women. But anyway, that's just one example of how feminism starts infecting religions. And Aldair even said in that live stream we did with news that feminism is basically a virus. It starts infecting everything in the culture. And it became way more aggressive after men were taken out of the home. Fathers were taken out of the home, and children started being raised by mothers, by women, and by the state. And I've said it many times here on the channel. Women, as in most women, aren't fully mature adults, complete adults, so they're incapable of raising other adults. That's why we have a generation that's supposedly adult, but actually extremely infantilized. But anyway, so I don't go off on too much of a tangent. So of course, you already have the Catholic side that's more infected by feminism, a bit more liberal, right? I mean, I think even the Pope, if you push it, might soon be defending birth control and abortion, right? But anyway. But if you look at it, evangelicals still have some really hardcore, really fundamentalist groups. And if you look at it, they actually have a lot in common with Islam. So if immigrants started arriving, Muslim immigrants, Islamic immigrants, here in Brazil, probably among evangelicals and among Muslims, there could even be a certain alliance. Let's even take it a bit further, maybe even a fun alliance, where you have Muslims and evangelicals against the Catholics. Nutella, here in the country, Ray. But anyway, this video is supposed to be a really short one. Because there might be those people who, maybe because of a cultural or Western identity, a religious identity, say, no, no, those Deus Vult types, right? Remove kebab. No, we have to fight for the West. We need to have a religious, cultural, and racial war with the Muslims because they're going to come here and want to do the same thing that happened in Europe. But one thing that's already happening in the Northern Hemisphere, both in Europe and in North America, is Western men converting to Islam. That makes perfect sense. Look, on one side, you have Western society that just tears men down. The culture is already totally anti-male. They keep making more and more laws to basically turn women into a privileged caste, and men second-class citizens. Even Rollo Tomassi already says it. Today's women see men as two categories: breeders and pack animals. That's it. You're either going to be one or the other. The idea of a guy being a husband, a life partner, that's gone. It's down the drain. So you have a really misandrous society, extremely anti man. And then another culture comes along offering something better for men. Maybe offering a heavier patriarchy, or maybe even that light, moderate patriarchy we had back in the 30s, 40s, 50s. So, look, the situation in the West is so trash that whether it's, say, Islamic or maybe Chinese, whichever of these two cultures shows up, they won't need to offer much to win over the alliance of Western men. Let's just do a little exercise, a basic one, something minimal. Let's say they come here and change that legal issue that's been around for about 70 years, something like that. Like putting the definition of illegitimate child back into the law. That's one thing. Let's put it this way: a woman is involved with a man, she's not married to him, or she's involved with a guy who's already married and a child is born. A man has no legal obligation to this woman or to the child because the child was conceived outside of marriage. It's an illegitimate child. Just that alone would be enough to convince men, to win them over. But of course, that would be more controversial. But let's take something really, really basic that they could come here to Brazil and offer to Brazilian men to win their support, right? To get them, let's say, maybe not fully culturally and religiously to convert to Islam, but at least culturally. Because Islam is that kind of thing. It's both a religion and a form of government, right? It's not just the religious aspect, it's religious, cultural, and also governmental. Let's say they came here and simply said the following: from now on, women will have to be punished for adultery. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's paternity fraud. It doesn't matter if it's just basic cheating without paternity fraud. I'm not necessarily talking about, oh my god, let's throw them in the middle of the square and stone them until they're pulp. Now, let's just say this: she will be penalized. What could that penalty be? Man, it could be a divorce where she loses her share of the assets and has to go back to her parents' house empty handed? Or only with the possessions, the assets she acquired herself, right? It could be a penalty where she loses custody of the kids, right? Like, she would have to lose her alimony, she'd have to lose her share of the assets, right? And then, as a consequence, she might or might not lose custody of the kids, right? Let's say it doesn't matter, again, whether it's Chinese or Muslims who come here and start to take over. If they offer just that, from now on, adultery will be punished. Think about how many men would start supporting them, would side with them. Let's say, not necessarily fully convert, but the guy could even keep his own culture, his own religion, but still support those guys, even politically, right? Just like in the Netherlands, where there's even an Islamic party, or even a guy who's evangelical, and he might even start changing things in his own church, and also align himself more with these so called invaders. What percentage of men do you think would convert? Right? So it doesn't matter what the dominant culture might be in the future: Islamic, Chinese, whatever. They won't need to offer much to convert Western men or conquer new territories. It was the West that was stupid. The West was extremely stupid and extremely weak because it forgot two very important things. The first is that it's men who support and defend society. Basically, it's men who keep society running. But they're not robots, they're not slaves or idiots. Society has to offer them something in exchange for their effort. There has to be a certain alliance between the rulers and the men of a society. The West forgot about that. And the West forgot something else that many rulers throughout human history have always known. Single men in your society are a risk because they're men with a lot of free time and a lot of free resources at their disposal. Because, as we've already discussed here on the channel, up until 1 or 2 generations ago, when the overwhelming majority of men got married and had 2, 3, 4 kids, basically, a man would keep at most a quarter or a fifth of his total income for himself. Everything else went to the family. So just imagine you have a situation where single men have 3, 4, even 5 times more money at their disposal than men did in the past. And a lot more free time, too. That's where the catch is.